The Enigmatic Neighbor. A disturbing true story. In the quiet suburbs of Rochester, New York, the Mitchells believed they had found their dream home. It was a charming 4-bedroom house with a spacious backyard, perfect for their 3 young children. The neighborhood was filled with families, the streets lined with old oaks, and the air echoed with the sound of children playing and birds chirping. It seemed like the ideal place to raise a family. But, as they would soon discover, the peaceful facade concealed a disturbing truth about one of their neighbors. The Mitchells moved into their new home in the summer of 2015. Initially, everything was perfect. The neighbors were welcoming, often stopping by to introduce themselves and offer help. Among them was Mr. Adams, an elderly man who lived directly next door. He was a quiet, solitary figure, often seen tending to his immaculate garden or reading on his porch. His demeanor was pleasant but distant, and the Mitchells thought little of it, assuming he was simply a reserved individual. Over time, however, subtle oddities began to surface. The first sign of trouble appeared when Sarah Mitchell, the mother of the family, noticed her cat, Muffin, acting strangely. Muffin, usually an adventurous and friendly feline, had become skittish and refused to go outside. One evening, Sarah found Muffin hiding under the bed, trembling and hissing at the slightest sound. Concerned, she took Muffin to the vet, but no medical issues were found. It was a puzzle, but with the bustle of settling into a new home and managing 3 kids, Sarah pushed the incident to the back of her mind. A few weeks later, while playing in the backyard, the Mitchell children discovered a small, hidden gate in the fence that separated their property from Mr. Adams. Intrigued, they pushed it open and found themselves in Mr. Adams' meticulously kept garden. When Sarah found them, Mr. Adams was already there, smiling warmly but with an undertone of tension in his eyes. He gently but firmly told the children to never enter his yard without permission. Sarah apologized profusely, feeling a pang of unease. Why did a man living alone need such a secluded garden? She brushed off the thought, focusing instead on her children's curiosity and innocence. The next incident was more alarming. One evening, while taking out the trash, John Mitchell noticed a flickering light coming from Mr. Adams' basement window. At first, he thought nothing of it, assuming it was just a faulty bulb. But as days passed, he noticed the light would turn on and off at odd hours, accompanied by strange, muffled noises. Curiosity piqued, he mentioned it to Sarah, who also found it peculiar but suggested they leave it be. After all, it wasn't their place to pry into their neighbors' affairs. Then came the night that changed everything. It was late October, and the Mitchells were preparing for bed when they heard a loud, panicked knocking at their front door. Opening it, they found their neighbor, Mrs. Lawrence, from across the street, frantic and disheveled. She spoke in hurried whispers, insisting they come outside. Confused and alarmed, they followed her to her home, where she led them to an upstairs window that provided a clear view into Mr. Adams' backyard. What they saw sent chills down their spines. In the dim light of the basement, visible through a small window, was the figure of Mr. Adams. He was hunched over a table, methodically cleaning what looked like blood-stained tools. The scene was reminiscent of something out of a horror film. Mrs. Lawrence revealed that she had been observing strange activities at Mr. Adams' house for months. Odd comings and goings at all hours, muffled screams, and the mysterious disappearance of neighborhood pets. Frightened but unsure of how to proceed, the Mitchells and Mrs. Lawrence decided to contact the authorities. They reported their observations, emphasizing the strange behaviors and the potential danger. The police, initially skeptical, agreed to investigate due to the disturbing nature of the claims. The following day, officers arrived at Mr. Adams' house. To the neighbors' astonishment, Mr. Adams was calm and cooperative. He allowed the police to search his home, including the basement. What they found was horrifying. The basement was a chamber of horrors, filled with animal bones, makeshift cages, and various surgical tools. It was clear that Mr. Adams had been conducting gruesome experiments on animals, possibly leading to their deaths. Mr. Adams was arrested and charged with animal cruelty and illegal possession of firearms, as they found several unregistered weapons in his home. The investigation revealed that he had a history of mental illness, which had gone untreated for years. He had developed a delusional obsession with medical experimentation, believing he could cure diseases by studying animal anatomy in grotesque detail. The discovery shook the neighborhood to its core. Families were in shock, struggling to reconcile the image of the quiet elderly gardener with the monstrous reality of his actions. The Mitchells were particularly traumatized, knowing how close their children had come to potential danger. In the aftermath, the neighborhood slowly began to heal. Mr. Adams' house was sold, and new, unsuspecting residents moved in. The Mitchells took extra precautions with their children, ensuring they understood the importance of boundaries and safety. They also became more vigilant, forming a neighborhood watch group to prevent any similar incidents in the future. The story of Mr. Adams served as a grim reminder that appearances can be deceiving. The seemingly benign neighbor next door could harbor dark secrets, hidden behind a facade of normalcy. It reinforced the importance of community vigilance and the need to address mental health issues before they manifest in dangerous ways. For the Mitchells, the experience was a stark lesson in the unpredictability of life and the necessity of trusting their instincts. They learned that while it is essential to be kind and neighborly, it is equally important to be aware and cautious. The memory of Mr. Adams and his basement of horrors lingered in their minds, a constant reminder of the thin line between normalcy and the unthinkable. The unsettling reality of suburban life. A true neighbor horror story. The American suburb has long been idealized as a haven of safety, tranquility, and community spirit. Yet, beneath the manicured lawns and white picket fences, there can lurk the darkness of human nature, revealing that even the most seemingly peaceful neighborhoods can harbor unsettling secrets. This essay recounts the disturbing true story of one such suburban nightmare, a chilling tale of a neighbor's descent into madness and the havoc it wrought on an unsuspecting community. The arrival of the neighbors. In the spring of 2008, the serene suburban neighborhood of Lakeview Heights welcomed a new family to the community. The Johnsons seemed like the perfect addition. Mark, a software engineer, his wife, Lisa, a school teacher, and their two young children, Emma and Jack. They moved into the colonial-style house at the end of Oak Lane, a cul-de-sac known for its friendly residents and sense of camaraderie. Initially, the Johnsons appeared to fit right in. They attended block parties, participated in the neighborhood watch, and even hosted a memorable 4th of July barbecue. But as the months passed, subtle signs began to suggest that something was amiss. The first red flags. It started with small incidents. Mark's increasingly erratic behavior. Neighbors noticed him pacing his front yard late at night, muttering to himself. He began to make peculiar alterations to his home, installing high fences and security cameras, which seemed excessive for such a low-crime area. These quirks were often brushed off as eccentricities or the actions of a particularly cautious homeowner. However, Lisa's demeanor became a source of greater concern. She appeared anxious and withdrawn, a stark contrast to her previously warm and engaging personality. Neighbors rarely saw her outside anymore, and the once lively home grew strangely quiet. The situation escalates. By late 2009, Mark's behavior had become increasingly alarming. He was often seen having heated arguments with invisible adversaries in his driveway. Neighbors overheard him shouting about conspiracies and threats to his family. Attempts to reach out to Lisa were met with silence, as she seemed to retreat further into isolation. One night, the tranquility of Oak Lane was shattered by a loud crash. Mark had driven his car into his own garage door. When the police arrived, he was belligerent and uncooperative, ranting about being pursued by unknown enemies. This incident marked the beginning of a series of events that would deeply unsettle the community. The disturbance intensifies. In early 2010, the Johnsons' house became a fortress. Mark erected more barriers around the property, and bright floodlights were installed, casting an eerie glow over the cul-de-sac each night. Neighbors felt increasingly uneasy, particularly when Mark began to accuse them of spying on him. His paranoia seemed boundless. He claimed that the entire neighborhood was in on a plot against him. Things took a darker turn when one of the neighbors, Tom Anderson, confronted Mark about the disturbances. Anderson had been a resident of Oak Lane for over 2 decades and was known for his level-headedness. He hoped to reason with Mark and alleviate the growing tension. Instead, Mark responded with aggression, threatening Anderson and accusing him of being part of the conspiracy. The community takes action. The final straw came when Lisa and the children vanished in the summer of 2010. Neighbors hadn't seen them for weeks, and their absence was deeply troubling. Concerned for their safety, Anderson and several other residents contacted the authorities, insisting on a welfare check. The police found Lisa and the children barricaded in the basement, living in squalid conditions. Lisa was emaciated and visibly traumatized, while Emma and Jack were frightened and malnourished. Mark had been holding them captive, convinced that this was the only way to protect them from the perceived threats. He was arrested and later diagnosed with a severe paranoid delusional disorder. Aftermath and reflection. The Johnson story sent shockwaves through Lakeview Heights. Residents struggled to reconcile the nightmare that had unfolded with the peaceful community they had known. Lisa and the children received medical and psychological help, gradually rebuilding their lives away from Oak Lane. Mark was committed to a psychiatric facility, where he began a long journey toward treatment and recovery. In the wake of these events, the neighborhood faced a collective reckoning. The experience underscored the importance of vigilance and the need to address mental health issues before they escalate into crisis. It also highlighted the potential dangers that can lurk behind closed doors, even in the most seemingly idyllic settings. Lessons learned. The tragic events on Oak Lane serve as a stark reminder of the complexities of human behavior and the thin veneer of normalcy that can mask profound distress. They illustrate how critical it is for communities to remain connected and attentive to the well-being of all their members. While it is natural to value privacy and independence, these should not come at the expense of noticing and addressing signs of trouble. Mental health is a crucial aspect of overall community health, and early intervention can make a significant difference. The Johnson story might have had a different ending if there had been more awareness and resources available to address Mark's deteriorating condition sooner. Conclusion. The disturbing true story of the Johnson family is a poignant example of how hidden turmoil can disrupt the fabric of a community. It serves as a powerful reminder that behind the facade of suburban tranquility, real human struggles can lurk. By fostering a culture of empathy, vigilance, and proactive support, neighborhoods can better safeguard their residents and prevent such tragedies from recurring. In the end, the tale of Oak Lane is not just a horror story but a call to action. It challenges us to look beyond appearances and to recognize the importance of mental health care and community solidarity. Only by doing so can we hope to create truly safe and supportive environments for all.